Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menonton Pilihan Awani dan hari ini mungkin ramai di Malaysia tidak menyedari adalah Hari Hak Asasi Manusia Sedunia, 10 Disember setiap tahun. Dan isu hak asasi manusia sering diperdebatkan dan dipercakapkan di Malaysia sejak beberapa dekad yang lalu. Tetapi baru-baru ini ia mendapat perhatian yang baru apabila munculnya isu-isu dan kontroversi-kontroversi seperti ICERD dan sebagainya menghidupkan semula debat berkenaan dengan hak asasi manusia dan takrifannya di peringkat global dan juga hak sama rata. Dan untuk membincangkan di mana berdirinya Malaysia dari segi konteks piagam hak asasi manusia Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu PBB, menyertai saya hari ini adalah Dr. Anjhula Mya Singh Bais. Beliau adalah pengerusi ahli lembaga tadbir Amnesty International Malaysia. Dr. welcome to Pilihan Awani.
Thank you.
It's an open secret that Malaysia has always been one of the most criticised countries in Asia, at least when it comes to human rights. It is so-called Malaysia Baru. Where do we stand today in terms of total adoption and the total embrace of the UN or UDHR in Malaysia?
Well, I think perspective is everything in a way. Thoughts become things. So, you can look at the glass half full or half empty. So for now, I'll say 3 out of 9 we've ratified.
3 out of 9. Why 9? Such a peculiar number.
No, those are the amounts, the covenants, if you will. 3 we've ratified and we have 6 more to go.
Okay. Are we at least on the right track, in your opinion?
I believe so. I think it starts with even agreeing to look at an issue, even bringing it up, having dialogue. There was obviously a lot of campaign promises during the election. So that's part of the process. And then you have civil society debate. With civil society organizations, you have consultations. For a healthy democracy, of course you need debate and talking about the issue. So right now we're more or less there. Of course there's a difference between implementing, ratifying something, passing it, and then actually having it implemented. But that's a little in the future. So for now, at least, we're raising awareness.
Talking about agreeing or participating or ratifying and actually following through with it, there have been debates, rather criticisms, that these human rights convention, UN-based or otherwise, are not really working. Because I'm sure you heard of the example, Saudi Arabia, for example, ratified ICERD, but its leader is now deep in the midst of an alleged murder plot involving a journalist. Countries like the Philippines subscribe to UNHR, or UDHR rather, and it's now in the midst of a bloody drug war that doesn't seem to care about human rights. So it doesn't seem to be working. Should we change our approach? We can't get these countries to sign and commit fully to advocate for total adoption of human rights ideals. It's not working. Should we change our approach on a global scale?
Okay, that's a great question. Yes is the short and succinct answer, but another way to reframe that is, without the United Nations, where would we be? Of course, it leaves a lot to be desired at times, and things might be slow in progress. But, one thing I've realized is, on some level, sometimes if we move the needle even a centimeter, and we leave places and people better than we found it for the next generation, so they can pick up the baton. Sometimes change is slow to change the psyche of a culture. But without the United Nations, my question is, really, where would we be? At least the countries who are signatories, that is something in which we can hold them accountable to.
But
if there was no signature, then it is a wild, wild west. We have examples, definitely. At The Hague and international pressure, we can see what's happening. We haven't come to in the example of Saudi Arabia, we haven't come to a conclusive, definitive judgment yet, but the international pressure is doing something. And we get to cite the fact that they're a signatory. So signatory is definitely the first step. What else can we do and change? We need to get citizens involved completely. Sometimes citizens, not even sometimes, most of the time, or a lot of the times, they are more involved and have better ideas than the governments. The government can learn from their citizens.
So every society, every country is different. There are sensitivities. The best example is for Malaysia is the recent ICERD, of course, giving rise to a lot of tensions, a lot of discontent. The Sri Mahamariamman Temple, USJ, is also another example. Is there a way, because the question is always, is there a way that Malaysia can fully adopt and embrace the UDHR, and I'm talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, without offending local culture and sensitivities, especially with Asian countries like Malaysia?
Absolutely.
How so?
Whether it's culture or religion, every culture and religion at its positive and at its, when it's sort of channeling its higher self, always advocates the dignity and respect for every human being. So these two ideals are not incompatible. And I think what's happened is there's been such misinformation that sentiments and emotions are running high, but we're not looking at things factually. So really, there's no clash. I mean, you can acknowledge sensitivities, but then there also needs to be a radical change in mindset where it's not demonizing others in this us versus me or us versus them mentality. Like we were speaking about, when you uplift a whole country, everybody stands to gain.
Thanks, Doctor. We have to take a short break. Kita akan kembali bersama Dr. Anjhula Mya Singh Bais, pengerusi ahli Lembaga Tadbir Amnesty International Malaysia. Pilihan Awani akan kembali selepas ini. Bertemu kembali dalam Pilihan Awani. Hari ini adalah Hari Hak Asasi Manusia Sedunia, dan untuk membincangkan berkenaan dengan di mana berdirinya Malaysia dalam perdebatan implementasi hak asasi manusia dan hak sama rata dalam konteks Malaysia baru ini, menyertai saya hari ini adalah Dr. Anjhula Mya Singh Bais. Beliau adalah pengerusi ahli Lembaga Tadbir Amnesty International Malaysia. Doctor, before the break we talked about a few things, but we don't have much time now. I would like to bring and zoom out a bit and bring this discussion into a much larger macro focus. The criticism has been, and it's not just recently, but for the past few decades maybe, that the UN employs a one-size-fits-all model in coming up with this human rights framework. As I've mentioned, every country is different, every society is different. The total adoption of the UDHR principles, human rights principles, equal rights principles, maybe can be accepted in Europe and the US, but probably not so in different societies, including in Asia, ASEAN, and Malaysia. Is it fair to expect every country to fully adopt and accept the total human rights and equal rights ideals in the same way as Europe and the US have?
Without a doubt. And the reason I say that is because, when you do on-the-ground research, academic papers, research, people, everybody deserves the right to equality and dignity. When we think of this one-size-fits-all, it's very broad, very inclusive, very accommodating. And the problem is, when we've had these protests against ICERD, it's based on fear and distrust. People don't want to give up the status quo, right? But if you look at exactly what you're saying, the macro picture, we all stand to benefit to realize these things. And I'd be very careful in how we say, sort of religious sentimentality or culture. Those words can be appropriated to completely uphold a destructive status quo. We've seen in so many countries, like, people in India, for example, the Hindu custom of sati, which is lighting yourself on your husband's funeral pyre. For generations, that was quoted as, that's our culture. But how is that acceptable?
Pardon me for interrupting, but I would like to return to what you said earlier about everyone deserves to be treated equally. I fully agree, but to a certain extent, does the definition of equality may differ? Can it differ according to circumstances and to countries? I'll give you an example. The PM now, Dr. Mahathir, has always said that affirmative action is to correct economic imbalances in the country, way back when, maybe even until today. So in that way, so-called positive discrimination and affirmative action can help put everyone on a level playing field and therefore be equal. Isn't that the definition of equality?
UN, the ICERD, what we're trying to ratify, that's not against Article 153 of the Constitution. We need to see how we're framing it. Right now, it would appear that it's, sort of discriminatory in practice. One could almost argue that it's helping marginalized people. ICERD and the article are not at loggerheads with each other. But before we can even get there, we need to have dialogue. But right now what's happening is there's so much emotionality.
Do you believe in, because people may start out, or certain groups may start out not from the same place, do you believe in different policies catering towards different segments of society that may seem like discrimination, but with the end goal of bringing everyone to the same destination?
Well, I think it depends on the context, but I think you need to examine how well have these provisions, if you will, to help certain marginalized communities, how well has it worked in Malaysia for the past 60 years? You know, you need a deep dive, detailed analysis. Is it something that'll work, or is it something that's taken advantage of?
I mean, I don't have the answer, but if there is a
But
study...
these are questions that need to be asked instead of a blanket statement that's, no, what's mine is mine.
I totally agree, but if
And
there
how,
is...
by the way, how is that empowering for, you know, let's say the Article 53 and those that are against ICERD? On one level, that is disempowering them. You know, you're cut some slack, you're cut favoritism. Fundamentally, in the psychology, like, of your mind, you know that.
If there is ever a study in the future that says that these policies work, would you support policies there?
Of which policies? ICERD?
Affirmative action, positive discrimination policies. If it is proven in the future, I'm not going to say I'm not saying that it's going to be proven that they work, but if they are proven to work in the future, would you then accept that these actually work practically?
I would need to obviously see the research on that, right? I wouldn't say no to it, but it should not be at the cost of others.
All right.
Which means ratify ICERD.
And it's perfectly possible to ratify ICERD without encroaching on the federal constitution.
Absolutely. We just need to be open to dialogue. And history has shown us that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anjhula Mya Singh Bais. We don't have much time. It's a huge topic to discuss. I'm sure a 1 hour show would not be enough. But thank you so much, Dr. Anjhula, pengurusi ahli Lembaga Tadbir Amnesty International Malaysia, membincangkan topik-topik perdebatan hangat sempena Hari Hak Asasi Manusia Sedunia hari ini. Dan itu sahaja untuk pilihan awani malam ini. Terima kasih kerana menonton. Saya Lukman Haris. Kita jumpa lagi. Assalamualaikum dan salam hormat.